Hello, thank you for joining me for this video on differentiated instruction. In this video, I'm going to discuss the types of learning diversity that exist in a classroom, ways to differentiate instruction based on the principles of universal design, and the importance of differentiated instruction and monitoring behavior. Teachers in differentiated classes use time flexibly, call upon a range of instructional strategies, and become partners with their students so that both what is learned and the learning environment are shaped to support the learner and the learning. This quote stood out to me as it highlights the importance of knowing what variations exist in a classroom and how to go about accommodating them. Everything in a differentiated classroom is designed to support the students and assist them in achieving their goals. This can also be expressed as removing any barriers to learning. Barriers can be any physical or developmental challenge that inhibits a student's academic success. In an inclusive classroom, teachers are aware of each student's barriers and actively supports them through modifying or differentiating lessons. With most differentiated learning, all students need to gain the same essential knowledge, use the same essential skills, and probe the same essential understanding. Yet because of variance in their readiness, interest, or approach to learning, students need to master the knowledge, come at the ideas, and work with the skills in various ways. Differentiation is all about creating multiple pathways for student success. This is the core understanding all teachers must have. Over the course of this presentation, I will break down these elements and how they work in accordance with each other. I'll begin with the types of differentiation that can exist in the classroom. Readiness is all about meeting students where they are. Students come from all different backgrounds and arrive in our classrooms with a wide variety of base knowledge, understanding, and skill. This doesn't mean that they can't all have the same goals. It just means that more time needs to be taken to ensure the foundation we are building on is level. While readiness is typically based on reading level or grade level, you can't entirely rely on it to predict how a student will perform. It's not as simple as an entrance test score. Readiness varies within each student based on project, topic, and previous experience. Determining a student's readiness for each lesson allows us to gauge what level of challenge is appropriate. The next idea to keep in mind is student interest. What subjects are they interested in? What holds their attention outside the classroom? You may be able to use this to structure lessons that will keep them engaged. One way to get a sense of the interests in your classroom is to give the students a survey, asking them to rate their interests on particular subjects and types of activities. The third idea is learning profile. Learning profile is basically a way to say how a student takes information in best. What are the strengths and weaknesses? Howard Gardner brought forth the idea of multiple intelligences, which is depicted in this chart. Some examples of these intelligences are visual, auditory, physical, and logical. This theory aligns with the core belief of differentiated instruction that implies the problem never lies with the student, but with the lesson. The idea of multiple intelligences teaches us that students all have strengths and weaknesses, and it is not just possible, but preferable to encourage them to use those strengths to gain understanding. Once we understand the types of variation that can exist in a classroom, we are tasked with figuring out how to modify the curriculum to meet those needs. Educators use their knowledge of their students' readiness, interests, and learning profiles to present lessons by varying process, content, and product. Differentiation by content is when the goal of understanding specific skills, facts, or concepts are the same, but students reach it through different paths. These paths are often how the teacher chooses to present the information. An example would be if you want students to practice the skill of identifying plot points in a story, you can differentiate by providing students different books that meet their readiness and ability levels. Other ways to differentiate by content are through video, lectures, or presentations. Process is how students make sense of material. To differentiate by process means to vary the activities and ways students interact with content. Some ways to differentiate by process are through tiered activities, learning centers, and graphic organizers. Differentiation by product means that while the process may be similar for all students, like all reading the same book, what they create to demonstrate their knowledge will vary. If the importance of a unit is content, then it is possible for the students to display their knowledge or apply the learned skill in a variety of ways, including written, verbally, or through a song or a drawing? Are we asking to see how well they understand a subject or how well they can write about what they understand? If the goal is the former, content mastery, then the product can vary to match the ways each student expresses themselves most effectively. This is best done through giving your students choices and providing a rubric that is specific to each product so that they are clear on what is expected of them and how they will be graded. Here are some additional things to keep in mind when you are modifying lessons. It is important for teachers to understand the content they are teaching and be very clear on what skills or information they want their students to learn. Also consider what goals individual students have, particularly those with IEPs. Students with different levels of ability will need different levels of challenges. Therefore, it's important to know what baseline knowledge all students will need and what ways that knowledge can be extended past the core lesson. This does not mean you need a different lesson for each student, but having a solid core to your lesson will allow you to adapt it as necessary. Technology can also be used to eliminate physical barriers for those with physical needs such as hearing or vision impairment. Some technology is individualized, like hearing aids, which a teacher could assist in checking for proper use. They can also be general, like dictation machines or audiobooks for those with vision or reading impairments or disorders. Listed below are some other ways to modify lessons. The goal of universal design for learning is to create equal opportunities for all students, regardless of their ability, be it academic or physical. UDL was originally an architectural concept that aimed to design with accessibility in mind, rather than as an addition or an afterthought that needed to be puzzled in. A misconception of universal design is that it just caters to those with specific needs, when in fact it is the idea that everyone benefits when everyone is considered from the beginning. Educators have adopted this approach because traditional methods of teaching only teach to the middle. Universally designed lessons may have more challenges, such as taking more prep time, but when done well, they always rear better results, including a deepening of student understanding and ownership of their education. UDL requires a teacher to consider representation, how the student will take in the information, engagement, how the student will connect with the information, and expression, how the student will display their understanding of the information. These concepts directly relate to the types of differentiation I discussed before: representation to process, engagement to content, and expression to product. There are 7 principles to creating a universally designed lesson. They are: equitable use, means individuals get even gains from it, such as presenting vocabulary in a way that allows the most amount of students to understand. The second is flexibility in use, which is a variety of approaches. Think about other ways to use things. Design provides choice, particularly adaptations and multimodalities. Simple and intuitive use, creating things that are self-explanatory and clear. In other words, easy pathways. Perceptible information, which is many ways to take in information, such as closed captioning on a video. Tolerance for error, opportunities to be correct, allow for do-overs. Low physical effort. Physical spaces shouldn't distract or impair learning. Sizes and space approach and use. These are physical needs. Is it maneuverable? Will it work for many different lessons or students? These are all very important things to consider when you're designing a UDL lesson. The importance of monitoring behavior and embedding social skills and how to collect data on it. Social skills are important to student success and individual well-being. When a child acts out, it is our responsibility as adults to recognize they are in a developmental period of their lives, and that bad behavior isn't always as simple as a pure desire for chaos. Every behavior tells us something about a student. For example, maybe they are trying to compensate or distract from an academic challenge. Maybe their home life is causing them stress, and this is the time they let out those frustrations. Children and adults are often products of their environment. Being inside the walls of a school doesn't switch them to learning robots. There are people who are trying to figure out themselves and the world, and school is meant to be a safe place for them to do just that. It is important to approach any behavioral issue or developmental concern with that in mind. Behavior monitoring is an important part of teaching. We do more than impart academic knowledge on impressionable minds. We are role models and helpers who try to engage with the student as a whole person. There are processes that help us monitor behavior and social skills, and methods to collect data on it as well. The steps to this process are: 1. Define the inappropriate behavior. 2. Collect, compare, and analyze the information. 3. Determine the reasons for behavior. 4. Develop a plan. And 5. Evaluate effectiveness. Some ways we can work with students on this is to have one-on-one meetings and use tools like behavior contracts, reward systems, and self-assessments. Thank you for joining me for this video. I hope it was helpful.